Hey, what's the most important news story in the whole world right now? Oh, I don't know. Is it that Barack Obama is spending so recklessly that credit rating agencies are threatening to downgrade the creditworthiness of the United States government? Is it the fact that NATO is losing the war in Libya and that Russia is siding with Gaddafi? Is it the birth of a new country, of South Sudan and the violence there? No, silly. It's none of these. The story that is the obsession for the world's media right now is that a newspaper in the United Kingdom called the News of the World has been caught hacking into people's voicemails to find out their secrets. It's an interesting story for sure. I mean, the editor has been arrested. The owner of the newspaper took the dramatic step of shutting it down, even though it was the largest English language newspaper in the world, with a circulation of nearly 3 million copies and 7 million readers. It's an interesting story, but is it really the top story in the world? For 3 days running? Is it really the top story here in Canada? Apparently it is. Here's just a small sample of the coverage that the CBC alone has done on this story. Roll the clip.
You've seen her at Rupert Murdoch's side, his CEO, a star in his empire, smiling in the eye of the media storm.
In a week like this, I can't let my Friday panel go without talking about News of the World.
Shamed and losing face, Rupert Murdoch finally buckled.
Rupert Murdoch faces an angry public on a day that saw heads roll at the top of his media empire. For more than a week, we've watched a scandal explode in the UK. Scrutiny of Rupert Murdoch and his media empire moved to the US today.
Hilarious. Look, is a newspaper that most Canadians have never heard of, let alone read, really that big a deal? Of course not. Part of this is just journalists' obsession with themselves and their own industry as vanity and self-absorption, but that doesn't quite explain it. I mean, in Britain, it's interesting, especially for the News of the World's competitors, but News Corp, the company that owns the paper, doesn't have any business here in Canada at all. There's no connection to Canada. I mean, the criminal aspect here is interesting, and the technology aspect is too. But again, when was the last time the media was so interested in hacking cell phone messages? In recent months, the FBI has been hacked, the Pentagon has been hacked, tens of thousands of documents have been stolen. Sometimes it's by anarchists, sometimes it's by foreign governments, especially China. But never before has the press shown as much interest in the subject. I don't know, maybe it's the involvement of celebrities, like an aging British actor named Hugh Grant. Grant, of course, hates tabloid newspapers like the News of the World. They're the ones who embarrassed him when he was caught with a hooker named Divine Brown. Remember that? I mean, that's a prostitute named Divine Brown. Hugh Grant's not just a whoremaster, of course. He's a cheater. He was married to Elizabeth Hurley when he started prowling Los Angeles looking for street sex. So, of course, Hugh Grant hates the tabloids. They expose his sordid lifestyle. He's always fighting with them, sometimes physically. Grant was arrested a few years ago for beating up a photographer, but the charges were later dropped. But Grant has had a bit of a career comeback lately by taking on the News of the World. So maybe that's the reason? Splash of celebrity? Nah, I think there's still much more than that. You only have to watch the wall-to-wall coverage of this for a couple of minutes before you see why the consensus media, the mainstream media, is obsessed with this story. It's because of the man who runs News Corp, the company involved. His name is Rupert Murdoch. He's 80 years old, which means he's got a bit of a history, which is why reporters hate him. 25 years ago, he single-handedly broke the iron grip that the newspaper unions had in his home country, in the UK. Back then, unions insisted on using costly, century-old technology to protect their jobs. Murdoch actually built in secret a state-of-the-art printing press across town, and when the unions went on strike on Fleet Street, he simply started up the new factory and never looked back. Pretty soon, every newspaper in the UK followed suit. The union's power was broken, not just over newspapers, but across the country, too. That's why leftists hate him. He was Margaret Thatcher's ally. Now, ever since then, Murdoch has gone on to start TV channels, for example, in the United States, including the popular Fox channel with shows like American Idol and 24, and Fox News Channel, the most popular all-news channel in that country. Again, liberals hate him because the channel is conservative. And that, my friends, is why there is such a lust to get Rupert Murdoch. It's 25 years worth of pent-up leftist hate and now jubilation over his troubles. The Germans have a word for this, schadenfreude. It means rejoicing in the misfortune of others. The British would call it revenge, and the CBC just calls it a normal day's work at taxpayers' expense, obsessing about a conservative, even though he has no connection to Canada at all. Now, the leftists at the CBC and the New York Times and the Guardian of London would say this is about holding powerful media corporations to account and about journalistic ethics. Some of them are even calling for more regulations to govern reporters. Question, where was this attention to detail with ethics or even following the law just a few months ago during the WikiLeaks affair? Remember that one, you know what I'm talking about? It seems like just yesterday when all of these same leftist media organs, the CBC, the Guardian, and the New York Times, couldn't get enough of illegally hacked information. Just like the News of the World scoops, the WikiLeaks files were criminally obtained. But instead of listening to the telephone voice messages of celebrities, like Murdoch's News of the World did, the CBC, the New York Times, the Guardian, and all the others ran with scoops that revealed United States national security secrets. WikiLeaks was news, just like Hugh Grant's affairs were news. But in the case of WikiLeaks, the Julian Assange distributed, for example, details about technology used by America to stop improvised explosive devices from being detonated. They published the names and locations of human rights activists in Afghanistan who helped NATO. Reporters Without Borders said that was setting up, quote, deadly revenge attacks. A Taliban spokesman named Zabihullah Mujahideen was thrilled with this information, saying, quote, we know how to punish them. I mean, these WikiLeaks leaks cost lives. The CBC, the Guardian, the New York Times, all the people who are suddenly so pious about journalistic ethics positively cheered when WikiLeaks stole those hacked memos. What was their phrase again? Information wants to be free. That's what they said back then. They didn't care about national security or military secrets or keeping the identity of Afghan human rights activists secret. But boy, they're mad about the News of the World embarrassing some politicians and celebrities, aren't there? So far, there hasn't been a trial, let alone a conviction, but Murdoch has already shut down the paper, fired a bunch of managers, made a public apology, and today he appeared before a parliamentary committee where he got pied in the face. Compare that to the kind of accountability at other monstrous media empires like, oh, I don't know, say the CBC. Yeah, the CBC. I mean, don't even get me started about how the CBC conducts its investigations. According to Jerry Forrester, an ex-FBI agent, he was paid $1,500 a day by the CBC, plus expenses, to dig up dirt on Canadian fashion mogul Peter Nygaard. A sworn affidavit filed in court by a private investigator said that Forrester bragged that the CBC's Fifth Estate paid him $9,000 to find Maribel Rodriguez to talk on the show. He even offered to pay women to tell stories about Nygaard. Now, Forrester later said, oh, I was just all bragging, and these allegations are still before the courts. But are you shocked? Are you shocked at the allegation that the CBC would engage in such conduct? Well, how about the court ruling that declared that the CBC regularly breaks Canada's laws, the access to information laws, illegally hiding secrets from taxpayers about how it uses our money? How about outrageous conduct by CBC staff? A few years ago, a CBC employee named Bob Keating rubbed raw chicken and dirt onto some chocolates and mailed the box to the head of a political lobby group he hated. He still works at the CBC. That's their staff ethics. How about accountability? I mean, the CBC isn't a member of the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council. They're not a member of any press council. They engage in anti-competitive behavior, buying exclusive broadcast rights to public events like the Stampede or Canada Day, forbidding private broadcasters like us from showing those public events. I mean, for years they tried to block a black radio station, CARN, from getting on the radio dial. For a while there, they even tried to charge you $25 just to email or print an article from their website. I mean, what a scam. And don't get me started on the corporate culture of materialism and hedonism over there, the champagne, the free Harvard tuition for managers, the ritzy hotel rooms. You know, a few years ago, I spoke at a CBC meeting, and I flew into St. John, New Brunswick, on the same flight as the CBC president. I'm not kidding. We arrived in St. John, and there was a stretch limousine with a uniformed driver and a hat on waiting for the CBC president there. I am not making that up. And at the hotel, we were both staying in the same hotel room. I was in a regular room, I don't know, $100 a night or whatever. The CBC president literally had booked the presidential suite. This was just for a staff meeting. But he was living the lifestyle of a rock star. I mean, at least Rupert Murdoch earns his lifestyle. He doesn't get $1.1 billion a year from taxpayers. Rupert Murdoch has been humbled. He publicly apologized. He shut down the world's largest English newspaper, and his staff are facing criminal charges. There has been more accountability in a single week for Rupert Murdoch than the CBC corporate monstrosity has faced in a year. If Rupert Murdoch operated like the CBC does, he would face jail time for law breaking, for anti-competitive behavior, for breach of fiduciary duty to shareholders, and for destroying $1.1 billion in value a year. Hugh Grant is right. No one should listen to your private voice messages except for you. But that's not what Murdoch is being pilloried for. He is being chased because he's conservative, because he broke Britain's unions, because he runs better newspapers and TV stations than his liberal rivals do, and because he makes money. Next time, he should know better. Just steal NATO secrets and publish them to the Taliban. Then the CBC and the rest of the media party will be very forgiving.